Hey, hello, hi, this is David Wolinsky back with another interview from the audio archives of NoDon'tDie.com. This time I'm bringing you the first half of my conversation with Rodney Greenblat, which took place on December 11th, 2015. Down below you'll see a link to read a full transcript of the conversation if you'd like, and also if you'd like, there's a link to my Patreon, which goes to help support my ongoing work on this project. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Okay. My name is Rodney Allen Greenblat. I am 55 years old. I live in the middle of New York City, actually down in Soho, which I've lived here for many years. I got into the game business in a crazy path, on a crazy path, because I had my career had been in the fine arts, and I had been making, I graduated from the School of Visual Arts in the late 80s. I started making really colorful, kind of cartoony art. And I was part of the East Village art scene in the 1980s, along with Keith Haring and Kenny Scharf and all kinds of David Vonarovich and all kinds of amazing people. I was very lucky. I was only about 25 years old. I was 25 years old in 1985, and I was able to be in the Whitney Biennial, which is a big twice-a-year exhibition at the Whitney Museum here in New York. And it was really exciting. It was an exciting time, and it was a lot of fun. I made lots of artwork and sculpture and paintings. And then, by chance, a guy came and looked at the gallery, one of my shows at a gallery, and he was a young businessman from Japan who was hoping to start a business repping foreign artists, right? That was his angle. And he saw my gallery show, and he thought that my work might have some commercial potential in Japan. And we met a couple of times, and eventually he started getting me some illustration jobs, which I really wasn't exactly looking for, because I was having a relatively good run as a fine artist.
I mean, you were in the Whitney.
I was in the Whitney. Actually, it
yeah.
doesn't mean you can make a living on it. It just,
oh no, I know, but I think that means that sort of would direct sort of, I think, what you were hoping might happen next, or what you were looking for next.
Right. I mean, I was a kid. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I just thought whatever opportunities come, I'll take. So
right.
I did a couple of illustration jobs, and couldn't believe I was paid very well to do some really high, really out there ads. Actually, one of the first ones was for Sony, just by chance, and working with like a huge advertising agency to do some jobs for department stores and a couple other things. And that led me actually to get a contract with a licensing division of Sony. So Sony had seen some of my ad work, and they had seen my, I forgot to mention, I also did some interactive design for CD-ROMs. And they had seen that work too, so they decided to kind of make a deal with me as a kind of a contractor with the agent that I was with. His name is Tak Iwayoshi. So Iwayoshi-san and I formed a little. Well, I was his client, and he was my agent, and we created a deal, an interesting deal with this license division of Sony. And it was really fun. I started designing all kinds of printed materials, like T-shirts and lunch boxes and notebooks and address books and keychains and just all kinds of stuff. And I drew some little cute characters. And they were good. I mean, it wasn't like making tons of money, but it was really fun, and it was so cool to see my stuff in stores in Japan. That was really wild, and that was going well. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we got a call from another division of Sony, a company called Sony Computer, and they were developing this game machine called PlayStation, which was going to be a Nintendo killer, I think, was the basic plan. And
very violent language.
And they
in
wanted,
those days, yeah.
And they wanted me to come and look at it and meet this guy, Masaya Matsura, who was developing this kind of Simon Says like game for this amazing PlayStation thing that could actually do 3D computer graphics live. I mean, it was so mind-boggling then that it was great. So I went and I looked at this thing, and they showed me like a dinosaur's head rotating in 3D. And I was like, whoa, that's on a game machine? We were like, yeah. So they asked me to be the designer on this 3D environment game. And all my drawings were like flat, kind of cartoon style drawings. And I said, well, I don't know how my characters are going to look in this kind of like weird 3D. And then Matsura said, no, we want to do it in 2D. We want to have 2D characters running around in a 3D world. And I was like so into that. I was like, this is great. That's how I joined that team. It was really kind of fun because I was already in Japan working for Sony Creative. And Sony Computer was just starting to become the huge company that they are now. They were just getting started, actually. Yeah. So that is how I got to be the character designer for PaRappa the Rapper.
Well, there you go. So this is an odd first question to ask, and I didn't anticipate asking this, but like, you went from, working on collaborating with Sony on things for keychains and all sorts of different products. I mean, did it seem like the video game division, did it seem like they were sort of treated or approached in a similar fashion as they might a keychain project, as they might a video game project, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure where you're going with that, but
I'm not going anywhere. I'm just curious.
No,
how does a giant company like that, approach like, okay, we want to do a campaign around a keychain as opposed to a campaign around a video game? Like, were there similarities?
Well, from the point of view of a licensing company,
yeah,
not really. They were going to license the characters like within the company. They were going to one division was going to license to another. So, of course, like a license for a keychain would be very inexpensive, but a license for a video game would probably be more expensive. I don't really know. I don't really know the workings of how that happened in Sony, but it worked out well for everyone because the people I worked with in the licensing group were very creative, very interesting people and lots of artists. So I had a great backup when I started doing the character designs.
Yeah, I mean, I think what some people may not remember, especially stateside, is how truly big PaRappa was in its heyday. I mean, you mentioned like a Nintendo killer, but I think a lot of that era was marked by the search for Mario killers, and I mean, PaRappa was like the official mascot of Sony Japan, right?
No, it never really was. It never was their official mascot. I hoped that they would, but they never actually did.
Was Mr. PlayStation the actual official mascot, or I guess that was sort of my impression from looking back in those years, and at least I had read some stuff that said PaRappa was the official mascot for Sony Japan. So am I just getting bad information there? Or?
Yeah, that's not right. He never was their official mascot. And I think that was a big mistake on their part. They should have. It was so perfect. Actually, there were some Japanese characters that they used in their promotion. They never had an official mascot. And if you look at Sony, they actually never really use cute characters to sell their products. They always maintain kind of a tech angle, even to this day. Even in Japan, where every company uses cute characters, Sony, for some reason, didn't do that. And I was always surprised and also disappointed because PaRappa was just the perfect character to describe Sony, I thought.
How so?
Well, because he was about music, he was very upbeat, he was young but not too young. He's kind of like a young teenager all the time. I mean, I think he really cut across several different areas that their audience was interested in. he is kind of international. He speaks English. I mean, there was lots about him. And then the whole rap thing, and just like so many things about him, I thought would really express what I think Sony should have been expressing.
Yeah.
But they went in a different direction.
Well, so I mean, I'm curious because I think you've had a trajectory that I think is sort of lacking a lot in the game industry right now, as far as just people who come from a radically different background, who have had already like a career, start of a career as a fine artist. I mean, beyond like technical know-how, I mean, what do you think sort of blocks creative people with different backgrounds from working on games?
Oh, well, I think the technical part is a big stumbling block, because it seems like you have to be very technical to be in the video game industry, but that's not true. The video game industry needs great art and great writing, just the same way TV production does, and you don't need to know anything about TV production to be a great TV writer. So it's sort of the same. But for some reason they have it has a more tech feeling. I think that's one roadblock. Then the other is just how video game companies operate. Hollywood has a way of dealing with artists. I mean, they really have a system, and they really maintain it. And even the licensing industry, which is a kind of a sub-industry in some ways of other industries, they also know how to pay creative people and to give creative people contracts and treat creative people. But I've never really felt like the really commercial video game industry ever got that right. It all seems to be in-house, and maybe not all of it, but quite a bit of it comes from within the companies.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's a little weird.
There's no pipeline, like, if you're a very talented writer, to find like a game company to work with, or like individuals, or like the way that the industry is structured. Like, you'll never see like a dream team collaboration with a lot of different talents from a lot of different companies. They're sort of not locked is too strong a word, but they are sort of gated from collaborating, and it works both ways. Where if you're outside, what if you wanted to make a video game, but you don't work at one of those companies, but like you're a great like jazz pianist or something, or some sort of like how do you find a way in?
It doesn't really seem to be a way in. I mean, I don't know about it.
Yeah,
but like if I was a jazz pianist and I wanted to score a Hollywood movie, I would get an agent, and that agent would tell me which places I could knock on the door, and I would get my stuff together and make a go of it.
So, I mean, do you just feel like you got lucky and it was random, or?
I was very lucky. I was very lucky because even...
I mean, you have one of those trajectories where, like, when people come to you for advice, like, what do you even tell them? Like, they don't work in the game industry.
It's really hard. Lots of young people write to me and they want to know how to get into the game business, and they have a great, crazy character idea for a game, but I don't really know how it happens. I mean, the way it happened for me was just like this really strange path that basically put me in an office in Japan, like with people who were friends with the people who were starting this game company. So it was just like hard to repeat.
Well, so I mean, as people probably could guess, reading this far into the interview, and sort of that you're not in Japan anymore. I mean, what sort of happened? I mean, why did you not continue to seek a career in the game industry with Sony? And that may be none of my business, and I hope that's not, painful to ask, but.
Well, there were a lot of circumstances, and let's see, it was a TV show in Japan. They made there was 24 episodes of anime for kids, It was
of PaRappa?
Yeah, of PaRappa.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
It was
okay.
It was a big deal. It was a big deal. In order to make the animation company, which was also another part of Sony, but they really wanted a large part of the rights to make the show. They wanted a big piece of the pie in order to pay for the projected 20 segments that they wanted to produce, whatever they are, 20 minutes long. It's really expensive to make TV animation.
Mm-hmm.
And they had what they thought were the best writers, and they really had it all worked out how it was going to work. And I really wasn't into it. I didn't like their writing. I didn't like the way they were going to market the show. I wanted so much to be on the writing team, but they didn't want me, basically. I was on the game team, and they thought the game people had to be separate. And we were just finishing, Jammer Lammy, and I was actually done. My part of it was done, but the game was still being finally finished. And they thought I should be on the TV team because I should be finishing Lammy, but I was actually done. I mean, just personally, my illustration part was done.
Right.
So I fought to be on the TV show team and make the TV show great, but I wasn't able to.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a little disappointing.
Gleaning from the outside, like, my best guesses are just that, like, it seems like the rights were sold or something, thinking you would have more creative or more say in the creative process, and then that didn't happen. But I mean, I did watch several episodes, in anticipation for us talking, and it seems like it takes no real inspiration from the source material at all.
Right.
I mean, there's no rapping in it even, which is a strange critique to make, but that's pretty central to what it to what it is.
Exactly. I'm not imagining it, right? I'm not like picking at details. It was like it didn't have any rapping.
Right.
It was like really weird, and the characters were like school children sitting at desks in a classroom.
Well, and they added some characters to try to. I think inject some conflict into the I mean, it's odd, and so, but you're saying, like, sort of that and the way it turned out, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it gave you a sour taste and then you wanted to leave the game industry, or what happened?
No, it wasn't that at all. It was just the rights to PaRappa got boggled, and for us to make another game involved that animation company, involved Matsura's production company, which was separate, Sony Creative, the licensing company, and then myself and my agent, our group, and then there was also a sponsor. It was Takara Toys. So like 5 competing, large entities struggling for the rights to this thing, and then the TV show was not a success in Japan.
Yeah.
So we had what basically looked to them as a failed property, with 5 different people trying to split the contract.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do anything about it. I just gave up. I have to admit, I couldn't fight them. I couldn't make them do what I'm doing. So
yeah,
that's all it was to it. That's all.
And you weren't interested in working with Sony, or
no?
I mean, because you did like a Wii game a couple of years.
Yeah, no, I was still interested.
Later, right?
No, I was still interested.
Yeah,
I wanted PaRappa to go on and on. I mean, I wanted to see like a PaRappa race game, and I wanted to see PaRappa quiz games, and I wanted to see all kinds of PaRappa games.
Yeah.
But after the TV show Boggle, I just didn't feel like there was anything I could say that was going to cause them to do that. I mean, I don't know what the politics were inside Japan. I don't know what they were doing or what their arguments were. I really don't know. So I just had to just sort of fade out of the whole thing and wait.
Yeah.
But nothing ever happened, basically.
Yeah. Of course, now, after this interview goes out, people will be hating you up, suggesting you do a Kickstarter for any slight variation of what you just said.
What would it be for? I mean, it's like
it would be PaRappa or something. It would be like just different enough,
Well, yeah, right. Okay, one more thing, if you really want to know.
Yeah.
I'm not alone here. Matsura was the genius behind the music in the game. Let's face it.
Right.
He is amazing and an amazing artist. And he didn't really want to go for it either. I never really understood why, because I kind of felt like he had a little more energy than I did and a little more clout inside of Sony, but he didn't. And you'd have to interview him to find out why. I really never got the story of why he also felt like fading away from Sony also. So without Matsura and without me, it was really hard to.
It was just like a deadlock.
It was
all around.
It really
was. And at that point, why bother for what feels like a cause that all these other companies sort of resisted your involvement in and then are preventing you from working on. So
right.
I think too, like, against that backdrop, like there was a big cultural shift as far as like the types of games that became more and more popular. And I'd be curious to hear, like, from your perspective, like when I think back on PaRappa, I think about, it's a game series that sort of could demonstrate to people both in and outside of games that video games are capable of more than just, running and jumping and shooting. But I wonder, like, why is it that, like, why is, like, like coming of age music games are somehow more niche than, like, games about, amateur archaeologists or space soldiers shooting people? Like, you know what I mean?
I think so. Go over that. Like, go over that again.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of words, but just like, like why is something like PaRappa considered, more niche, and we don't see its influence around as opposed to something like, Doom or Quake or something. That's what I mean. Like, they're both fairly niche, but one obviously got more popular, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I think PaRappa was the inspiration for like those Guitar Hero things, and that was really big.
In a way, I mean, but those are, I mean, they're more about music. But I mean, like PaRappa is like a relatable character, and I don't know that you necessarily see a lot of those. And I would agree that, like, I think it helped open the door for like music games.
Yeah, right.
The coming of age part, I think, is important, because I don't know if you really pay attention to video games much from the industry, but I do feel like we're the relatable characters.
Yeah, right. No, it's true. I mean, when I go into the game store, none of them stand out. I mean, my only experience is to walk into like GameStop and look around, or walk into Best Buy and look around at what they're pushing.
Yeah.
And I never loved the characters that were on the box covers. I mean, none of them sparked my interest that much. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I was about to ask what happened, but I guess maybe the more salient question is, like, you've been deeper in at a game company than me, but what seems to dictate, like, what gets copied or picked up on as far as what games get made? Like, what seems to dictate that?
I'm not sure, but money is a big factor.
I knew you were going to say that.
I think they need to sell to their core audience big time. Yeah. The core audience shifts; they just like shift with it. I felt like with PaRappa and with the first PlayStation, and also Nintendo's boxes and Wii, that they were heading towards a more general audience, which I thought was great. I thought, wow, if this is really going to be a platform, an entertainment platform for general audiences, then I'm going to have a good place in it myself, and it will be something that will sell to all kinds of people. But that just didn't happen. it doesn't seem to have happened that way. It
Mm-hmm.
really kind of went more for the young male, you know, techie sports and war kind of audience, and I'm not really sure why.
I'm not sure why either.
Is it because? Do you think it might be because those people could spend more on games individually? And that's one theory that I have.
I think part of it's the perception that video games have always been for children, which has never always been which was never the case. But I think it's sort of a combination of that perception and then the fact that people sort of age out of video games. They stop playing at a certain point.
Right.
And so there aren't like a substantial part or a vocal part of the audience that's like, hey, I'm in my mid-20s or in my 30s and I'm still interested in playing. I just don't want to play those sorts of games. Like I don't even know how game companies are supposed to be receptive to that, or I mean, like I don't know if it's even fair to say I don't feel like I see them trying, because I see the same things in game stores that you do.
Right. Well, like in this interview, and you publish it, you should make a graph. You should do some research and put a graph of like what is the medium age.
Well, actually, I mean the medium age is supposed to be 37.
Right.
I know that. I did my research.
Good. That's like a whole different thing. I mean, what those people want is the psychology behind that is so different than games for kids. I mean, it's a whole other thing. PaRappa didn't fit into that at all, I don't think.
I don't know. I mean, some people are very upset about, representation in video games. Yeah. And, the games you did work on are notable in that, like, you did have, you had a female lead in one of your games that was a strong character and relatable.
Yeah. Lammy?
Yeah, of course.
I know, Lammy's the greatest character. She's so great. We were just talking about her the other day.
Who was?
Myself and who was I talking to Lammy about? Oh, I know. They're using Lammy in Japan. This company that does kind of cell phone wallpaper. You know what I mean?
Like backgrounds or whatever.
Yeah, backgrounds. But they're kind of integrated in the text. It's that company Line. It's big.
Line?
Yeah. Line is using Line in Japan. Line Japan is using some Lammy icons, and they came out really well because Lammy is a character that she's kind of an emotional character, and to show like these like emoticons that you have in your phone, you have to show on the little tiny character face some kind of expression. And Lammy's just so expressive in that way, and like to show disappointment and to show happiness and to show anxiety. Her face is really like good for that kind of stuff, and the icons they made came out really well.
Well, I mean, she very nervous is the way that I would think of her.
Yeah.
And I was curious because it does seem like in the game series at least, like they're also in the cartoon. Like she's not even in the cartoon. It does feel like she sort of got thrown under the bus. Like, and she does pop up in like PaRappa 2 a little. And I usually don't ask about these granular nerdy sort of things, but like I was curious if like other characters in PaRappa 2 sometimes are sort of like stealing her thunder a bit, and I didn't know if that was like you guys were making fun of yourselves or how Lammy did commercially, or what sort of was going on there.
I really don't know.
I mean, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the writing of PaRappa 2 I thought was really peculiar. The storyline with the noodles and everything like that, I thought was just
a little
bit on the weirdness is good, but weirdness that you can't understand or just that seems random isn't so good sometimes. And I wasn't sure where that whole story was going. I mean, I think Matsura always wanted to do something new. And I was really more interested in creating series. I really wanted to have some continuity. But that wasn't Matsuura's thing. Continuity was not something that he really cared about, which I thought was interesting because continuity to me in storytelling seems very important, but it wasn't important to him, so I kind of went along with him. But yeah, I think if I had written it, I would have done it a different way, as more of a continuing story instead of like this whole other world all of a sudden.